Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about, I think it's 8 books that I wish I could reread for the first time again. I've seen several people doing this on TikTok lately and it's just made me really start thinking about what books would I want to reread. So everything I've got on my list is based, I think, primarily on like the feeling that finishing the book gave me, the like experience of it. And yeah, these are all books I would love to be able to just re-experience that particular journey a second time for like various different reasons. And I'm so glad that I've read these, but also like I don't think I'm ever going to recapture that emotion that I felt reading them the first time. So the first thing that I have on my list is, I think, one of the most, pardon my language, but one of the most what the fuck books I've read. This is Rose House by Arkady Martine, which she's one of my favorite authors, so I was very excited when this came out. This is a very short novella about a sentient house where somebody dies inside of the house, and a detective is sent to investigate because nobody should be able to get into the house. The only person that should be able to enter the house is the architect's protege, who we know for a fact is not in the house, that she was elsewhere at the time of the death. So they go in to investigate, and things get very weird from there. There's a lot of stuff in here about like AI and sentience and identity, but also it's just like super creepy. The house itself is so creepy and disturbing. And I remember finishing this and just like staring at the ceiling, like I don't know what to do with my life now. I feel like there's some stuff that I missed on my first read that I will probably get more out of it on my second read. However, that first experience of just having no idea what was going on or how the characters were going to handle the situation that they were in, or, you know, even what direction any of it was going, I think that that was just such a wild experience, and I would love to be able to have that, like, stare at the ceiling for an hour afterwards kind of feeling again about this book. Next on my list is The Silence of Bones by June Hur. I think I talk about this book a lot, but this is one of my all-time favorite mysteries. This is a historical mystery set in Korea in 1800, in the Joseon era, and this one is following a young girl who is indentured to the police bureau while she's also looking for her brother who has gone missing. She'd like been receiving letters from him and he suddenly stopped writing. So she gets involved while working for the police bureau in the death of a noblewoman and is helping like the primary investigator on the case, and starts to form like a friendship with him until he becomes the prime suspect. And so she's having to try and clear his name because she doesn't believe he's done it. So there's a lot of stuff in this about like friendship and family and kind of loneliness, feelings of abandonment, but also of like, you know, finding a family in a sense, finding people to support you and building those relationships. And I loved this book so much. The ending made me cry. There's a twist that I saw coming like right from the very beginning, but it didn't really matter that I saw it coming because the emotional impact, the way that all of the relationships were built, the way that the twist was kind of set up, the way everything happened in this book, it just like, it didn't matter that I knew what was coming. It still just, you know, stabbed me in the heart in the best way, and I had to sit and like cry for several minutes after I finished this book. I just had to like close it, sit at my desk and sob for a little bit. This is just a beautiful story. I think it's got some beautiful writing, and I would love to be able to re-experience that again, because like I said, even knowing what happened from fairly early on, or what was going to happen, I should say. I didn't know what was going to happen with the mystery, but like there's this other twist that happens that I saw it coming, and I was just like, oh my god, my heart. And had to just like process that for a while. So I would love to be able to re-experience that, even though it was really sad. Like it was a good kind of sadness because I was impressed by how hard that emotional beat hit, despite my knowing what was coming. Next, I have a book I don't really remember the details of. I kind of vaguely remember the premise, but mostly what I remember about this is the experience of being like just so sucked into a book, so focused in on it that I could not focus on anything else. This one is Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This one is kind of generally about a guy who gets murdered in this small village, and everybody knows that he's going to be murdered. Everyone knows why he's going to be murdered, but nobody does anything to stop it. So this is an exploration kind of moving backwards from the murder and looking at the series of events that happened leading up to it that meant that everybody kind of knew what was going to happen and why nobody stepped in to stop it. So I remember thinking it was such a cool premise. I read this in high school. I think it was my senior year of high school. It was like right around the holidays. My family was visiting. I bought this on a whim at my local indie bookstore and then proceeded to devour it that afternoon. I like ignored my family and just everywhere we went, like going to dinner, I was just staring into this book, reading every chance I got, because obviously family stuff was going on, so I was having to read it like a little bit at a time. But I was just so obsessed with this. I needed to know what happened and how it happened and why. And I just came out of it with a massive book hangover. Like, I don't know what kind of a person I'm going to be after I've read this book. And it's that feeling specifically that I really remember from this and that I would love to be able to experience again, because it just was like such a strong emotional reaction. But it wasn't like sadness. It was this weird like wonder or awe, I think, and I just would love to be able to re-experience that, because I don't think I've encountered a book since that's given me like quite the same reading experience. Next up, I have a classic that I've read twice, actually. I read 1.5 times. No, I read it 2.5 times. Let me correct myself. I read it once, I reread it to write a paper, and then I read it another partial time, planning to write another paper about it, but I didn't do that. But this is Persuasion by Jane Austen, and the reason for this one is actually quite silly. I love Jane Austen's humor, and this book has like one of my all-time favorite jokes. It has a lot of really great jokes in it, but it has one of my all-time favorite jokes where she's just roasting a character. She made up a guy to roast him, and I love that. It's so funny. It's one of my all-time favorite lines, and I would love to be able to reread this again and re-experience that, because I remember reading it for class and just busting out laughing because I was not expecting that. And I just love Jane Austen's humor, and I would love to be able to re-experience all the kind of jokes and things in here. Also, I love the progression of the main relationship in here. I like the way that there's a bit of miscommunication in a way that I felt like really worked, where it was these two characters who have history who are just kind of not really willing to be completely open and honest with each other, because they both have like strong assumptions about how the other one feels about how things went. And I really appreciated the way that that was written. I think there's a lot of interesting ideas in here around economics, and it has one of the more unusual endings I've read in a Jane Austen novel. It has a pretty unstable ending rather than like unstable. I think it's unstable. Yeah. So like a lot of Jane Austen endings have this kind of like happily ever after, like the woman is marrying into a wealthy family, like all is well. This one leaves off at a point where there's like emotional happiness, but there's like this massive social and political instability issue that I think is really interesting. So I love this book, and I would love to re-experience all of that for the first time, but also especially this one joke in here where she made up a guy to roast him, and I love that for her. It was so good. Next up, I've got Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is one of my favorite books of hers. I've loved everything I've read from her, but this one has just such a magical feeling to it, and I think that's what I really want to re-experience here. This one feels so much like a fairy tale, and I think that the writing just works so well for that. It feels like a story that somebody is like verbally telling you. I love that writing style. I also love the progression of the relationship between the two main characters in this. There's just this really interesting development of friendship across it, and the ways that they like make each other better in different ways, but also the ways that they like push each other to figure out like what do I really want out of life. I just really enjoyed that aspect of this, and I appreciate these characters. I really love seeing Cassiopeia, the main character, grow across the course of the story, and she just matures so much and experiences so much, and I just love the feeling of this book, and I would love to re-experience this one. Penultimate choice is actually 2 books, so 2 of the 8, but this one I don't think will be a surprise to anybody who's been watching my channel recently, because it's the Radiant Emperor duology. These books destroyed me on an emotional level. I don't think I'm the same person after reading them, and I would love to re-experience that devastation because it was just so good. It's so well written. The emotional beats are so well earned in this that I would love to let these books break me a second time, and I will be rereading these forever. They're so good. My very final book is Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. I would love to reread this a second time, or rather, not reread it. I'd love to read it for the first time again so that I can DNF it this time and not actually have to have read it. So these are all of the books I wish I could reread for the first time. This is mostly a stack of books I love, and then I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist including Snow Crash there. I would love to be able to DNF that one and not have the knowledge of it in my brain. But yeah. Let me know down in the comments what books you would love to read for the first time again, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video.